Hello, eighth graders. We are going to cover one of the things that's coming up for you next week, which is writing a narrative essay. The first essay that you wrote for me this year was an informative essay. And I'm not going to lie, I think informative essays are way easier than any kind of narrative. Now, if you remember, a narrative is a story, right? That means it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end with events that occur throughout that time period and things that change over that period. So the narrative is a little bit more difficult to craft because it has a lot more elements, and people can lose interest in the narrative much more easily. An informative paper, if you're reading something for information, you don't expect it to grab your attention. Whereas if you're reading something that's narrative, you do expect it to grab your attention, and you hold the writer to that standard. So I have prepared a little way for you to remember what's important while you are writing this narrative. The narrative prompt is to write about an important person in your life. Okay, so it's a sort of like a memoir. You're writing about this influential figure. So it's a personal narrative. You need to do a couple of things when you do this. And these are lessons that we learned with the seventh graders this year. They have already done a narrative essay. So I'm passing on a little bit of advice to you that they already learned. Okay, or didn't learn. I don't know. Depends on their grade. But here's some things that you can learn. Okay, perfect timing. So the name that I've come up with to help you remember this phrase is SOC. Well, without the K, because not a lot of words start with K. SOC, S-O-C. Okay, so the first one is show the events of your story. Okay, so this is very important for narratives. In informative writing, it's enough for you to just tell the reader, this thing occurred on this date. Fine, okay? But for a narrative, that's not enough. That's not gonna fly, okay? It's saying, once upon a time, there was a boy named Dave and he lived in a house. Cool for like a children's story, but not for an actual narrative, not for something that you would want to read over and over. So we expect you to show us what's happening in the story. For example, don't say, my Uncle Teddy gave me a amazing birthday party when I was 11. Cool. How about instead you describe that birthday party? You say, it was 9 o'clock and the best birthday party of my life had just started. And now you describe the party. You're like, he set up streamers everywhere. There was a bouncy castle, right? Whatever. Tell us about what's happening in the moment. So show us what's happening. So show us the events. Number 2 is order your story chronologically. It is not enough to just list off events as they occurred in your memory. Okay, you need to actually give us some kind of timeline that we can follow. Otherwise, we're going to be very confused. You can write stories that go kind of out of order, or you can include like flashbacks that break chronology, but we need to have an underlying sense of organization. Even if you go backwards, even if you go like, this is what it was today and then yesterday and the day before that, we need to have an order, a structure to your writing. Don't just sit down and tap away. We want specificity on the order of your story. So you have to organize your story well. And the last one is C. And C stands for change. You should have things change over the course of your story. It is super boring if you start a story that says, once upon a time, there was a girl named Goldilocks, and Goldilocks liked everything to be exactly a certain way, and she never learned her lesson at the end. No, like, things need to change in our stories. The point is, they need to have change, okay? Your story needs to have change. You should, as the main character, somehow change over the course of the story, or your relationship with this influential figure needs to change over the course of the story. You cannot end the story the way that it started. Okay, so those are your 3 lessons. SOC, okay? S-O-C. Remember that. We need some kind of showing in the story, we need some kind of organization in the story, and we need some kind of change in the story. All right. As far as showing goes, I'd recommend that you include a lot of dialogue, meaning conversation with that person. Even if you can't remember a specific conversation you had, just give us like the cliff notes. Give us what you do remember. What you remember isn't perfectly accurate anyway, so just make it something that would make sense in the moment. All right. Organization, try to stick to some kind of chronological order so that we know what's happening, or at the very least have a strong structure. And finally, change. Make sure that you as a character are dynamic and do not end the story the same way you start. All right, see you later. Good luck.